Hello to you, my brothers and sisters out there in Chimes Land. This is Pastor Henderson, retired now, here with my brothers in fellowship in Oakland, California. This is Pastor Reverend Dr. Ambrose Carl of the Church by the Side of the Road in Berkeley, California. And seated beside him is Pastor Michael Smith of the McGee Avenue Baptist Church, also in Berkeley, California. We had a summit, our pastors sponsored on Saturday, we participated in, called Black, Green, and Traumatized. And now we're following up on that. And I just wanted you all to hear the wonderful things that are happening out here in California, particularly here in the Berkeley area, that they're on the cutting edge of, and they're going to speak for themselves now about their programs. Pastor Mike?
So, thank you, Pastor Henderson. It has been a blessing. About 4 or 5 years ago, we started a program called the Center for Food, Faith, and Justice. And our mission is building healthy communities from the soil to the soul. And so it entails urban gardening with youth, where we do garden and culinary arts. We have people working with the young people, justice activities that range from juvenile justice to food justice and food service. And we look at the intersectionality of those things as it relates to urban farming, as it relates to health equity, education, and so on. I've been real blessed because I actually teach a seminary level class in that same vein. And so we drew from that class in terms of building the center. And a few years ago, the former president of American Baptist Seminary of the West, where I teach as an adjunct, said, man, you need to call and start working with Reverend Dr. Ambrose Carroll, because Green the Church is doing what you're talking about on a mega scale. And so I've known Dr. Carroll for a long time, but we haven't really just done a lot of work together. And so I called him, and then he schooled me.
I kind of hear you on that.
He schooled me. And he started just talking and rolling out this powerful vision for Green the Church. And man, for those last few years, we just been joined at the hip. And so this whole thing about Saturday's program about Black, Green, and Traumatized, it was kind of an offshoot. We do a Earth Day symposium every year the last few years, but Dr. Carroll has the Green and Church Summit. And one of the things that after the summit, I talked to him about back in the fall was, man, when we do the symposium in the spring, it needs to be linked in to Green and Church and what Green and Church, and we both have been kind of working on this thing around mental health beyond our green programs. And so we wanted to follow the thread of the impact of mental and emotional health with the environment and environmental degradation, particularly on people of African descent. And what does that mean in our community? And so the same thing when Dr. Carroll put us together, and we just been blessed to be able to be enlightened by everything that you're doing at the Community Center for Community Engagement, and all the work that you've done with the Seeds of Peace piece. So I'm just excited, man, to be here, and I'm really excited going forward. So,
and I just want to put this in before we go to Pastor Carroll, because of him and the way Pastor Mike and I were able to come together was on a Christmas day, Christmas 2018. This fellowship began as these two brothers sacrificed their Christmas to bless me with their presence and to share with me their thoughts and visions, and we stayed committed to it and stayed on it. And Brother Carl, you did what you said you were going to do. Brother Mike did what you said you were going to do, and I'm here.
That's it.
So tell us about Green the Church, my brother.
Thanks. Good to be in fellowship with brother. There's a lot going on. I think we're in a cutting edge time in our society, nationally and internationally. I just praise God to be around folk like you all that know what time it is.
Wonderful, man.
So as we move forward, Green the Church in particular, founded 2010 as an organization to kind of sit at the cutting edge, the crossroads between the Black church and the environmental and sustainability movement.
Okay.
We were created as a repository or a clearinghouse because too many times we kept hearing the narrative that the Black church is not interested in the environment. And I knew that was not true. Although it's not a part of our vernacular, we don't talk about climate change that much. We don't talk about environment. That language has always been somebody else's language.
Yeah.
But we do talk a lot about revival. we do talk a lot about God taking what is dead, tired, and old and renewing it,
yes, sir,
and giving us new energy. And, if my people are called by my name, humble themselves, pray, see God's face, that we believe that God will renew the land. And so that's our reason to come together and really begin to chronicle where the Black church is working. And so our 3 pillars are green theology, right? We amplify green theology. We promote sustainable practices. And then we build power for economic and political change nationally and globally is the vision. This conversation about food sovereignty, about farming, agriculture, community gardens, that is a sustainable practice amid other sustainable practices that Green the Church talks about. So we talk about renewable energy. We talk about getting back out to wilderness. We talk about disaster preparedness. So there's a multiplicity of conversations. And we've really been looking for and identify who are the people on the cutting edge in the country that are into food justice and food sovereignty, which led us to meet Dr. Henderson. I believe we were in Baltimore, Maryland the first time that we met. He came telling us about what good things were going on in Richmond. Then here in Berkeley, a city where I pastor, found a champion that's already been doing the work that people in the country may not know about. But this food, faith, and justice is a powerful motif that not only is done practically, but Pastor Smith also, as a theologian, talks about it, pouring into seminarians. Like this is already all the way live. Robert Fulghum writes a book entitled "It Was on Fire When I Laid Down." So the reality is that the Black church is in these spaces. We are matriculating, and Green the Church is here to tell those stories as a repository to then be a catalyst so that other congregations can catch on fire. You know what I mean? And so delighted to be here this week as we continue to figure out and then put our wares together and figure out how to increase the network and the fellowship.
Amen. That's what we're here about. Actually, this interview is taking place following a meeting that we had a little bit earlier, and I was fascinated with how the language, as you were saying, the vernacular, the language has developed and evolved over here on the West Coast, and some things that we are still yet to hear about. So, Professor
Ross,
I would like for you to help. Anyway, I read your syllabus last night, just in case you read intersectionality. I was like, where this brother getting this right? I mean, those some words, man, I hadn't, it didn't have in my vocabulary. So help us to understand the language, the conversation around what is happening here in the green movement, the environmental justice, social justice movement.
So the concept of agroecology was probably birthed probably in the mid to late 80s, believe it or not, and really probably took root in the early 90s. And one of the things that agroecology really talks about is it almost takes permaculture and horticulture to the next level. And so when we were having our meeting earlier with Lauren Augusta, she was talking about John Jevons. John Jevons was one of the founders on the West Coast and laying down he's right outside of Santa Cruz. He's the University of Santa Cruz, University of California at Santa Cruz has one of the best programs in the country. And a lot of some of the national leaders have come out of that program. And as they have branched out for all parts of the country, the field of agroecology has grown, especially here on the West Coast. And so one of the things that agroecology looks at is not only sustainable farming practices, but it looks at some of the underlying systemic and systematic issues that are barriers for people, not just in terms of what is the additives to the soil and the emissions into the atmosphere, but some of the public policies and political practices that often bar people, and particularly poor people and people of color. And so it really looks at a couple of things. It looks at the science, but it also looks at the political environment. And how do we make the playing field not just sustainable, but more level for people to get involved. And so in our course, the course that you were referring to, we take it to a step further, where we're not only talking about agroecology, but we're looking at eco-theology as well. And so one of the things that we talk about, and what Dr. Carroll says about amplifying green theology, we kind of posit in the class at the beginning, oftentimes in the traditional Christian church, how you read Genesis 1 and 2, the narrative of creation.
Sir.
Right?
Yes, sir.
The whether it's the Yahwist perspective or the Elohist perspective, but how you read it, and that hermeneutic may interpret how you engage with the natural world.
That's right.
So oftentimes when we read the text and the word, particularly in the King James Bible, uses the word dominion, humanity or man given dominion over. Well, we talk about dominion theology, and where dominion and empire theology leads us to.
Yes,
sir.
Yes, sir.
On a lighter note, see, I'm an old Oakland Raiders fan. I ain't talking about the version today. I'm back in the 70s.
What name? The owner?
Al Davis. Back to Al Davis.
Yeah.
And Lester Hayes days. And old school Al Davis would say he didn't want to win, he wanted to dominate. And so if you start talking about what it means to dominate, I mean, come on, man, you want to run roughshod over everything.
Atkinson and Tatum.
And unfortunately, we give Atkinson and Tatum the earth. Right. And so the problem with our dominion theology is that if what I am doing is trying to dominate the created world, that doesn't end with the flora and the fauna.
That's right.
Eventually, I have to dominate my brother or my sister or communities that I don't think measure up. For whatever reason, they are not
who I am.
What I'm trying to dominate is God's self.
I'm trying to dominate God's self. And so we take that piece, and then also we bring the practical. So we want the students to get the theological piece, but in the class, a couple of days we do field trips where we'll bring them out to an urban farm and give them an opportunity to get their hands in the dirt. And then also the cultural context. So I had a student about 4 years ago in the class, and he was actually already an ordained clergy in the Presbyterian Church. And I can't recall the name of his program, but it's called Edible Churchyards is what it is. And he was going around, he's in the South Bay near Santa Clara, and he would go around and he would help congregations convert their manicured lawns into edible gardens. And he was in a community, because of gentrification, like many of the communities around here, that was pretty much white and pristine, and it become more Latino. And so he was trying to get the people involved with the church through edible gardening, but he was not planting culturally contextual foods that people who are coming from migrant communities in Latin America. And so, he's trying to plant stuff like kale, and he's trying to plant stuff like, the tomatoes they would eat, but other things that they were not familiar with. And he was wondering why they weren't using the garden, thus really wanting to be on the church ground and coming into the church. And then he said he started talking to the people, and they said, if you want our people to access the garden, you have to plant the peppers. You got to plant more of the tomatoes, the ayachote and the cilantro. And so we talk about cultural context. For us, if you look at our ancestry, whether we in California or Virginia, we know that Big Mama and them, they want to see some collard greens. And in Northern California, now where Dr. Carroll got some land in Fresno, it's hot enough to do it. We can't plant no yams out here. We can't grow no yams in the Bay Area. But if you go 100 miles,
you get some yams.
you get some yams. But Big Mama and them want to see some collards, and they want to see some yams, and they still want to see their tomatoes and stuff like that. But we have to talk about cultural context. And the other piece why I got into this piece too, and here comes the theological standpoint. Eating, right? If you talk to people in the food justice movement, they will say eating is a ecological act. And it is an ecological act because we know the farming, right?
Right.
But theologically, right? We also understand, right, that eating is a spiritual act. There was a reason why, in the Masoretic text, we talk about the Hebrew diaspora, the fatted calf, the sacrificial lamb. And we understand, right, in the New Covenant, that the sacrificial lamb is Jesus. But also in the Last Supper, the table fellowship that both he talks about and the Apostle Paul talks about, there's something that is spiritual in nature. And so it's both ecological and it is spiritual. And so how do we unite the two? So that's kind of where we go and why we so wrapped up together. And I'm not just saying this, but we so blessed to be in your presence. That's right. Because what we doing now is we ain't just talking about faith and farming. We expanding on the menu that God has laid before us, brother. That's where we are.
Bless God.
Go ahead, my brother. Thank you.
Bless God. Oh no, I'm good, man.
But that's because the conversation. This is. I don't want to. I know I want to be respectful of each of your time. So that's kind of where these brothers have been. Let me ask you to close out by just speaking a little bit about where you see us going, particularly our fellowship. What you want to come out of what we have just this weekend is a powerful weekend, and for me individually to walk away from this without having something that I've said I'm committed to you guys, it would be an abomination. So we know what we think we need to do. What do you see as next steps, my brother, and then to you, my brother?
Well, again, next steps for from a Green and Church standpoint is to solidify the movement of the relationship. If indeed we can be that clearinghouse, and we can continue to connect and grow the network of other like-minded individuals.
That's right.
And to bring them into the fray. And to begin to really for the Bay Area and other places, it's really about us getting the data, right? Really getting an understanding of what do we own, what do we have, who are we, right?
An
so that we have,
that's what you're saying.
So that we take inventory, right? It's time for the book of Numbers.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Our numbers, right? It's time to take an account.
Yes, sir.
Because again, God has given us and has empowered us, and sometimes we end up crying with a loaf of bread under our arms because we don't have a full understanding of what we do have.
Right. That's right.
And so for Green the Church, that's a part of the work that we want to continue to bring to the table as we work with Seeds of Peace, as we work with Food, Faith, and Justice, how can we, continue to bring people to the party and solidify, get those memorandums of understanding together. And then, it's about, yea, though I walk through the valley, right? It's about the Lord will be a light before our feet and a lamp before our pathway.
That's right.
We continue to pray that God allows us to know what God is doing.
Yes, sir.
So that we can move along with God.
Yes,
and in my experience, you don't get the whole road. You get the lamp before your feet. So as long as the Lord gives us the next step, we're going to take the next step in faith and continue to extend trust. Because until we can learn the speed of trust in our communities, we're going to continue to be plagued.
Gotcha. Appreciate that, my brother. Pastor, Donald?
I can't say it any better. I think that for me, the blessing is just being in presence. But going forward, I definitely want to make sure that we formalize those partnerships because I think as Green and Church tells the story and you lead the way in many places. One of the things I learned, the best way that I can be a good leader is to be a good follower. And for me, following people that I trust. And so I don't have a problem, when I need to yield to Dr. Carroll. I don't have a problem yielding to you, Dr. Henderson. And so we definitely, getting those memorandums of understanding together and then looking at those larger projects and the larger vision and how do we put feet to the fire, putting into action. I think the other thing that I want to make sure we commit to is being in contact, at least once a week, just so, whether it's email, whether it's a Zoom call, whether it's phone call, so that as things come up, the clearing houses, we can do it and making sure the ideas. And then the other thing I shared with you, two things. Green and Church's summit is going to be in St. Louis
October 3rd
in October.
to 5th.
Okay,
And so even if I can't make it out, I want to be able to send Michael, our garden coordinator. I want to be able to send Michael out if he's available to pay for him to get there, so folks understand that even though we in the Midwest, the West Coast is still represented.
That's right.
You understand what I'm saying? I definitely want to be able to bring you back out here to do this green revival.
Good.
And I was thinking about this, Dr. Carroll. If I can get Dr. Henderson to come back out to do the green revival, what we should do, and I was sharing this with Mark, our chef, and with J. Don and Michael, it would be great to do this. We do like a 2 or 3 day revival where you can preach. But what I want to do is a luncheon where we get the seminarians and we contact the people at the GTU, particularly at Pacific School of Religion and American Baptist Seminary of the West, and CDBSP, San Francisco Theological, and we have one day where we just have a catered luncheon and do a round table with you and a couple of people like Dr. Carroll, so the seminarians and some of these black pastors also can be in conversation. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because they need to, so that's the amplifying green theology piece that Green and Church and Food, Faith, and Justice can support, and then continuing to build the network. So I want to, I know that the Green and Church Summit is in October, and maybe we might see if I can get you later in October to come out to do it or whatever. But let's talk about that. But I don't want us to stop this energy, because I know the people at Church by the Side of the Road had to be blessed. The people at McGee was blessed, and the community people was blessed for your presence, man.
Oh, man. Well, thank you guys. I've been blessed mightily from being here. So, United States Department of Agriculture, Natural Resources and Conservation Agency, I hope you've been listening. I hope you got your ears on, because there are some powerful and positive things that are happening here on the West Coast, and we've managed to tap into it by the grace of the Spirit, and you see the embodiment of it here. We just hope you're prepared to do your end, because we're going to do ours.
Yes, sir.
Doing that. Peace
All
and
right.
blessings to you.